Happy Wednesday, everybody. Thanks for joining.
Okay, folks, we're going to get started. We've got a jam-packed session and want to get you out of here early than late. So hopefully we can wrap up shorter than 30 minutes. Target's maybe that 28 or so. Thanks for joining Emerging Trends. This is a strategic knowledge share that is created for thought leaders in all types of business sectors, industries, and companies. It's sponsored by Konica Minolta, and it is delivered by the enterprise team. In previous session, we did AI readiness and thought the great transition to that would be functional fluency. And so this is your departmental leadership that really embraces the knowledge and gets productivity out of it and capabilities. So everyone knows the gentleman on the screen, Albert Einstein, and some know him as one of the most intelligent people, but I don't think it's intelligence as much as his greatest strength was perspective. The gentleman had the ability to look at things from all angles and not really make dramatic lines in the sand as he knows more knowledge, more time evolves thought processes. But this is interesting what he said about technology. He fears the day when technology overlaps with our humanity. The world will only have a generation of idiots. And so technology in that statement is meant to be used, utilized, and leveraged, not replace us. Okay, so with that said, lunchtime's a good time for social media. And let's kick off with a popular TikToker, and we've put some of ours up. If you're interested in technology, if you're interested in AI, this is a real fun way to get bite size of things. But Will's got a really interesting take here. It does fit into the content, so let's give him a minute.
If you want to really understand AI today, you need to understand it's not just ChatGPT versus Claude. They're the models, but there are also apps and there are harnesses. And in the next minute, I want to explain those three things to give you a clearer understanding of AI today and where it's going. And follow me if you want to learn more about AI without the hype. So the model is just the brain. Claude Opus 4.7, GPT 5.5. You can't change or improve the model. You just rent them from the AI companies. And they're more or less interchangeable. They're very similar in terms of intelligence, really. Your systems should be fairly model agnostic, so that you've got the freedom to switch between the models and just use the best current one anytime, okay? Then there's the app. That's what you use to actually talk to a model. ChatGPT.com is an app. The Claude desktop app is obviously an app. But then there's the harness, and this is the important bit. The harness is the scaffolding around the model that lets it actually do work, use tools, browse files, run code, take actions, and it turns a chatbot into something really useful. The common analogy is with the horse and the plough. So you can't do much to improve the horse, but how well you build and craft that plough that harnesses the horse's power has a huge impact on what work you will get done with it. Well, with AI, it's the apps you connect, the skills you give it, the folders of context, examples, instructions, and how you structure all of that. That's where you really level up your use of AI. So when people say to me, hey, should I use Gemini, Claude, ChatGPT? It's such a pointless question. My question back to them is, well, what harness are you going to build around it?
What a great way to look at it, right? Okay, let's kick off with our first scenario, the spreadsheet maze. Derek, talk to us about this situation.
Thanks, Joe. Most departmental leaders are drowning in data. They have plenty of information, Joe, but that information is trapped in separate silos and there's no single source of truth. And by the time they manually pull all that information together and cross-reference everything, that report is already stale. Frankly, it's a snapshot of the past rather than a current roadmap. I'm sure that we're all familiar with the following situation. You're about 15 minutes away from a big meeting. You're frantically logging into multiple systems, trying to copy and paste numbers from spreadsheets so that you can get it into your master spreadsheet, all so that you can walk into a meeting and answer one basic question. And this is what we're calling the spreadsheet maze. Now, the fix to this spreadsheet maze is intelligent data retrieval. That's the AI fix. IBM research indicates that organizations lose on average of 9.7 to $15 million annually due to operational inefficiencies and flawed decision making caused by poor data quality. Intelligent data retrieval solves for this manual hunting and gathering of organizational information. Intelligent data retrieval uses natural language processing, and what this does is this allows systems to talk to one another, ultimately breaking down the silos that we see. When the AI aggregates and summarizes this information, it compresses your decision cycle as a leader. And what this does is it allows you to lead from the front rather than spin all of your cycles on manual data gathering and entry. This makes it so that you're not guessing based off of last month's information, and you're really living in a living, breathing dashboard that's telling you exactly where your department stands at real time. So what does this mean for you as a department head? In finance, I want you to think that it's the end of the period, and maybe that period is annually or quarterly or monthly, but it's the end of the period, and your team is stuck manually tracking down variance reports and verifying journal entries. And by the time you get a consolidated full view, you're already weeks into the next period. But when you utilize an intelligent approach, you replace that entire grind that your team is doing with live consolidated financial dashboard information, which means you get real-time visibility into your P&Ls, into your balance sheet, which gives you true cash flow projections. You can adjust your corporate capital allocation based on real-time information rather than last month's information. For human resources, think about the massive administrative burden of tracking compliance and performance. So instead of a team leader manually sorting through hundreds of rows of a spreadsheet to see who's behind on mandatory safety and security certifications, or even try to spot trends of text-heavy employee feedback forms, AI synthesizes this data for you. It flags certifications that are expired before they become a liability, and surfaces cultural themes even. You could see in real time, are there morale dips within the organization? It gives you true workforce readiness. And for operations, what this does is it bridges this massive gap that often exists between the back office and the front line. Typically, when we're looking at order fulfillment metrics, they usually live in one system, while the actual plant floor data lives in another system. And sometimes that system is tracked on a clipboard on the plant floor, or siloed in local logs. And what the fix does is it merges all of this into a single view so that you don't have to manually collect that data. If a machine slows down or a line stops, you can see that, how it directly impacts you in real time, how it impacts your deliverables in real time, and it allows you to catch a fulfillment bottleneck while it's happening and then pivot resources in real time rather than finding out that it took place or that you missed a quota in a meeting on Friday. Now, it's really important to take a look at the stumbling block here. AI is only as good as what you feed it. So if your source data is disorganized, if it's unstructured, if it's messy, that AI is going to need some serious training and validation before you turn it loose. What you don't want is high-speed summaries of bad information. The ultimate goal is for you to get out of the spreadsheet maze, move away from the manual labor of data collection and analysis, access the living, breathing data dashboard, and so that puts you in a position where you can lead with real-time information and AI-powered insights. Now, Dennis, I'm curious, when you are working as a consultant with your client partners, what are you hearing about the spreadsheet maze?
As I'm talking to different clients, I'm talking to different folks, we've never had more data thrown at us, right? But the fact is, as the data becomes more organized and structured, leadership has more time to develop and collaborate with the knowledge workers and then ultimately drive those business results we're all seeking, right? This is where tools unleash the potential of talent. And while there's so much angst around AI, everybody's worried it's going to take my job. The fact is, these tools are going to enable, empower, and ultimately enhance the quality of time that the humans have to interface, to interact, and to achieve those results. So I'm curious, what everybody else's experience is on this call with the spreadsheet maze. Jason, I think you've got a poll.
Thanks, Dennis. Yes, I do. I'm launching that poll right now. Great information so far, guys. What I'd like to do now is see how that information applies to the real world, how it applies to our attendees' environments. So with that said, that brings us to our first question of the webinar. Now, everyone should see a pop-up box on their screens containing that question. If you don't, especially for our mobile users, please go ahead and check the chat because the question will be located in the chat area as well. I encourage everyone to please participate because your answers will help us shape future emerging trends webinars. So please participate. So without further ado, the first question: when preparing for boardroom decisions, what is the primary factor limiting your confidence in the data that you're going to present? Is that data latency, data fragmentation, or data integrity, the quality of the data itself? And I will give, since it's our first question, I'll give a few extra moments here. Answers are coming in. So far, overwhelmingly, it's option 2, guys, data fragmentation. And there we go, data fragmentation won by a landslide. Dennis, back to you.
Thanks, Jason. So, great. Next, I want to talk about institutional knowledge decay. So working with enterprise organizations, we continuously uncover what we call brain drain. Let me ask you this. Have you ever had that person on your team? The one who knows everything, every workaround, every exception, this is how we've always done it. Personally, I think back to Radar O'Reilly on MASH. He always had the answer for Henry Blake, right? And then one day, that very person leaves. And suddenly everything slows down. Decisions take longer, mistakes creep in. People start saying, I think this is how we used to do it. Does that sound familiar? It should, because the average tenure among knowledge workers these days is hovering around 4 years. So think about it. You spend the time putting a job description together, you recruit, you finally hire the right person, you train them, they begin to perform, and then they give notice. And if you're lucky, you'll get an exit interview. But here's another uncomfortable truth. Most organizations don't actually own their knowledge. It's temporarily housed in their employees. This is a problem. Think about it last week. I'll bet there's a situation where you had a critical decision that was made based on someone's memory. Or how many answers lived in one email thread that was buried somewhere in Teams? Or how often did someone say, I'm not sure, let me go ask so-and-so? That's not a system, that's a dependency. And it creates friction everywhere. New hires take months to ramp up, figure out what's going on. Teams duplicate work that may have already been done or has already solved some other problem. Leaders make decisions without the entire picture. But here's where it really becomes dangerous. This isn't just about efficiency, it's about risk. Because knowledge loss doesn't happen in one big supreme moment. It leaks out slowly. Whether that's retirement, attrition, roles change, even just people being too busy to document what it is that they do, right? And by the time you feel it, it's too late. It's already gone. So the question isn't, do we have a knowledge problem? It's really, how much do we not even realize what we've already lost? All this turnover creates a problem, but there is a fix. And the fix is generative knowledge mapping. Now, what does that mean? Traditionally, companies have tried to solve this by what I say the OG way of mapping. Let's document everything. So everybody hits pause. Let's start writing things down. Let's start, creating documents. What happens? Nobody has the time. When they finally do, the documentation's outdated. And then it just becomes a graveyard where PDFs go to die and no one trusts the information anyway. So IDC research shows that the average knowledge worker wastes somewhere in the area about 2.5 hours every day trying to maneuver through unstructured data. So what's different now? Well, the fix is agentic AI. It flips the model entirely. Instead of asking people to capture knowledge, AI can observe it, connect it, and activate it in real time. So just imagine every email, every chat, every document, every system is not just stored, but understood. It's connected, it's searchable in plain English. Instead of asking who knows this, you start thinking, okay, what happened the last time we dealt with this? And in response, agentic AI comes back and gives you an answer, a context, history, even the reasoning behind it, which often gets you 80, 90, 95, 99% of the way to your ultimate answer, right? And that's a completely different operating model. So imagine yourself in these shoes. You're a new ops manager. And instead of a 6-month ramp up, you instantly understand how your team operates, how they actually run. You're an IT leader. You finally make sense of legacy systems that were written a long time ago by people that are long gone. You're in leadership development. The tribal knowledge instantaneously becomes institutional knowledge. That's not just a productivity gain, it's actually a capability shift. But, and this is what matters, this isn't plug and play, because when you unlock all that knowledge, you also expose risk. There's HR data, there's finance data, executive conversations. The organizations getting this right aren't just deploying AI. They're building a governance intelligent model. And the payoff? Well, that's easy. Speed, consistency, resilience. Because when knowledge stops leaving with people, you stop starting over. And here's the real takeaway I want you to sit with. This isn't about being more efficient. This is about whether the organization can scale what it knows faster than it forgets. And the companies that solve that, they don't just keep up, they accelerate, and they accelerate exponentially. So I'm going to take a breath. I'm going to turn it over. Joe, what are your thoughts?
Well, so many thoughts, but I think if I tie both of them together, Derek's scenario and yours, it becomes two things: compliancy. That's what I hear in both of them, and the time spent with people. Back to even what we talked about in the very beginning about the humanity. This gives you more time in front of your internal and external clients, no matter what functional part of the business you're in. So before we move on, let's jump to another poll by Jason.
Yeah, Joe, thank you. Again, great stuff. You should see the pop-up box in your screen. If not, just as a reminder, please go to the chat. The question's located there as well. But I think this is such an important topic. So I think everyone at some point or another on this call has experienced that loss of critical information due to attrition, people coming and going, retirement, etc. So please let us know if your most senior subject matter expert retired tomorrow, how much of their tribal knowledge would be lost to your organization? Did you experience a critical loss of that information, accessibility gaps, or privacy risks? Please submit your answers now. Okay. They're still rolling in. Accessibility gaps is in the lead. Remember, please participate because this information will help us with future presentations. Accessibility gaps still winning. That's right. Accessibility gap is it. Joe, back to you.
Thanks, Jason. Good stuff. Okay, so we'll go into our third and our final scenario here. We call this one the compliancy tsunami. I love the visual of this wave of data just coming over us. In 2026 alone, global regulations with AI ethics laws, ESG mandates, cross-border trading, tariffs, taxes, all kinds of things are shifting, not only weekly, like the slide says, sometimes hourly. And massive legal teams are manually reading pages and pages of PDFs and updating their SOPs just to try to react, but dangerously slow. And this can be unbelievably expensive. What the fix is? We call this the autonomous compliancy orchestration. So Gartner tells us in 2024 alone, they're tracked in legislation bills over 2,400 pages of content, nearly 150 actionable requirements that were buried inside of that legislation that was either related or unrelated to those measurables, which is crazy to think, but it happens all the time. So what the fix is a 24/7 regulatory intelligence using AI bots, AI agents to monitor those global regulatory feeds constantly. We call these data points or entry points, and they can be pointed at a number of different things depending upon what the business or the industry is required to be governed by. When the chance of detection that AI can then map the new laws against current policies and flag and draft updates for a human review. Highly important on that. So from general counsel, this is shifting from reading and research to reviewing and approving. For finance, again, the global tax changes that reflect their financial systems can be handled on the fly in the moment. And then from a CSO, real-time carbon credit or environmental reports across enormous footprints in a lot of these companies can be real-time data. This is super, super helpful, and we've been struggling with it for years. It's only getting faster. So it's not all rainbows and butterflies. The stumbling block in implementation here is AI hallucination. The risk that it may misread nuances and trigger breaches. So the fix to that in the design level is a human in the loop validation, and that is non-negotiable. All our research, all our data, and all our experience shows it cannot function completely on its own. It's very irresponsible. So let's move into closing thoughts. We're coming into the final few minutes here. So the leader's mandate, functional fluency is not replacing judgment. It's about amplifying it. The leaders who will win are those who can move past reactive and to predictive. For so many years, we said from reactive to proactive, but that's no longer effective. It's predictive. From that siloed content, from that gut feeling, human beings tend to hold on to their experiences and saying, I experienced this in the past, so it must be the same. And we have to drive to data confidence. What does the data show? Not my gut. And so this is what it looks like. First of all, know it. Understand where AI creates leverage in your function. Then pilot. Start with a high impact case. And if you've already got there, you must move to a proven ROI. We see too many cases where AI has been deployed, but there is no return on the investment. And lastly, and this is super important, scalability as we build infrastructure and culture. That seems to be the key to the theme of all of this. It's not the technology, it's the people to expand with confidence. So, where do we go from here? Well, first of all, a big thank you to everyone behind the scenes that helps us out. Everyone in front of the microphones and the cameras. We had a lot of technical difficulty here. I don't know if it showed on your side, but we're all tweaking. But anyways, and then all of you, the audience, we can't thank you enough. The attention, the support that we get from these emerging trend sessions, it just keeps us going. So you're going to receive an email shortly after that today with today's presentation. You're also going to get the video and searchable transcripts so you can go back to any of these points. And we've created an executive briefing that will bring out other scenarios as well as color and details to the ones that we spoke about today. So at 2 minutes to the half hour, we are right on time. Thank you everyone for joining, and we look forward to seeing you next time.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.